This will be used by our enemies to motivate people to attack Americans and American facilities overseas, and I am genuinely concerned by that, as was the Secretary of State and the Director of National Intelligence.
They are bracing around the world for reaction if and when a controversial report on CIA torture is announced. For there is no doubt there will be reprisals. People will be targeted. And it's a bipartisan opinion that we are about to make yet another critical mistake with regard to American security. Let's welcome to MidPoint the former Deputy Assistant to Vice President Dick Cheney, Daily Beast contributor, and the CEO of Christie Strategist, LLC, Ron Christie. Ron, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Nice to join you again.
Ron, is there any doubt in your mind whatsoever that should this Senate report be made public in its entirety, well, we say entirety because there will be some portions redacted, but this will lead to a greater amount of violence directed to Americans from terrorists around the world?
Well, not only violence directed towards Americans from terrorists around the world, but also putting our assets, our agents, and the agents of our allies at significant risk. If it's one thing that those on the left don't seem to understand, is that you never reveal the tactics and the methods upon which the United States not only receives intelligence, but the way that we disseminate intelligence. Not only the way that we receive and disseminate intelligence, but the way that we extract intelligence from high-value targets who have information that's sensitive to perhaps save the lives of Americans or our allies. So I don't see any upsides of this release, and I only see harm coming to the United States, our allies, and our assets around the world.
Then, Ron, with what you just said, why don't members of the left then, quote-unquote, get it? If they know there's secrets in here, and if they know that the people who want to kill us, kill Americans, are using these things to their advantage, why then are they so damned that it has to come out and Americans need to know every single thing?
And this is about their assuaging their liberal guilt about how bad of a country we are. We torture people, we collect people whose innocence should be proclaimed in a court of law rather than in a detention center such as Guantanamo Bay, where they don't and are not afforded constitutional rights. The left seem to believe that if only we treated people fairly, if only, as Hillary Clinton said, that we could empathize with those who hate us, that somehow they'd turn around and they'd see America in a new light. But I've got news for you, Ed. They're not going to. They hate us because we believe in freedom, liberty, and democracy, and I just don't understand why those on the left just don't seem to comprehend the potential danger they're putting the country in.
What about the factor that apparently there will be things in this story, or in this report rather, that will say that George W. Bush was misled by the CIA, yet the president himself stands by the CIA report rather than distance himself? What is he thinking in all this?
Well, for having worked not only for Vice President Dick Cheney, but also as a special assistant to President George W. Bush, I can tell you I know the way that he thinks, and he relies on his advisors, those in a position to understand intelligence, those in a position to advise him on those sensitive matters. And if it's one thing that President George W. Bush is that he's very loyal. He places trust in people, but he's the ultimate person who makes the decision based on the trusted information he's been given. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that while there are those who suggest that he should distance himself from the report, I think he will embrace the decision that he made because obviously at the time he thought with the intelligence he possessed, he made the right decisions.
Ron, former director of the CIA, John McLaughlin, told the Times on Sunday that this report, quote, uses information selectively, often distorts to make its points, and as I recall, contains no recommendations, unquote. Would you agree with that, or would you say that, in your opinion, this report will be somewhat skewed to fit agendas?
Well, for not having seen it, I don't want to prejudge it too much, but yes, I will take your last point. I think this is clearly about prejudgment. It's clearly about skewing public opinion rather than it is discussing how our intelligence community has reacted since 9/11 and how our intelligence community has kept us safe since that terrible day. I think this, again, is more of a political agenda, a political vendetta of America's such a terrible, bad place, and gee, we need to make sure that we don't use waterboarding. We don't use facilities such as Guantanamo Bay again because, oh goodness, we're so bad. It really upsets me the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of training that we've placed with so many folks around the globe who keep America safe that for a political agenda, Ed, I think people are willing to expose that for their own personal political vindication.
I got about 20 seconds left, then we'll take a break and come back. But Senator Feinstein and Senator Claire McCaskill as well, do you think that maybe, with all due respect, they need to wake up a little bit and see how the rest of the world runs on a daily basis when it comes to killing and terrorism?
I do. I have great respect for Senator Feinstein from my beloved home state of California as a elected official, but as her wisdom here clearly demonstrates, it's a little lacking along with Senator McCaskill if they want to put this information out for the public to see and our enemies to learn how best to harm us in the future.
All right, stand by. Breaking back with more from Ron Christie. We turn our attention inward to the power shift in American politics and the violence shift in misguided demonstrations. It's coming up right here on MidPoint. Let's welcome back to MidPoint the former Deputy Assistant to Vice President Dick Cheney, Daily Beast contributor, CEO of Christie Strategist, LLC. Ron Christie joins us once again. Ron, we see what's happening on the West Coast now in your beloved state of California at Berkeley, where there have been rioting and looting again for another night based on the Garner and the Ferguson incidents. As a matter of fact, one left-wing commentator recently on one of the other networks indicated that arson and looting are, quote-unquote, not violence. And as a matter of fact, some people are almost seeming to drive this thing to violence. What is happening here, Ron? How do we stop this? And how do we stop what is being run basically by a false agenda in many situations?
Well, Ed, you're absolutely right. This is all about a false agenda, and it's about putting a false narrative out for the American people to believe that America is a racist, sexist place. If you look at the facts of this situation, I've read the autopsy report for the tragic situation of what took place in Ferguson, Missouri. And sad to say, but this young man charged a police officer. He reached for his service weapon. He retreated, and then he tried to charge the officer again. This isn't anything about racism. It has everything to do with a young man who made some very poor decisions and was killed as a result of it. But that's just not good enough. Either the American people are racist and, they're executing black people, or they're racist and they are not willing to put white police officers behind bars. Again, it's all about a political narrative. It has nothing to do with the facts. And if we had responsible leadership in the form of a president and an attorney general who would adjudicate fact, who would say that justice is colorblind, and they would urge calm and restraint, we might be getting somewhere. But I fear with race relations under this president having been worse than any point in my life for the 45 years I've been around, I just think things are going to get worse the next 2 years before they get better.
Fair to say, of course, that many would criticize the president. They'll criticize Eric Holder for this. But this is also a media issue here in so many ways, Ron, the business that you and I work in here, because there are people who have audiences who continue to claim that this is racism. And there is no evidence whatsoever that either in the Ferguson case or the Garner case that the police were driven by racism. So then how do we overcome that? How do sensible, intelligent, logically thinking Americans get what is the reality of this actually handed to them and be able to make a proper decision?
Well, I think Newsmax is a good first start. I think of actually calmly, coolly, and articulating what the facts are and allowing the readers to understand what the truth is, can we really get ahead of this? And I think Newsmax is really doing yeoman's work of putting out the facts and putting out the truth and combating this false narrative that other networks that you and I won't name are spinning out there. And for one of these networks to put Al Sharpton on the payroll, one who has a sordid history with race, one who has done nothing except to inflame racial tensions in this country, I think is a disgrace. The man ought to be fired. He ought to be taken off the airwaves. But of course, that network is trying to generate viewers based on hatred as opposed to generate interest based on facts.
All right, let's spin for a couple of minutes here and get something else on facts. I wanted to get your take on Asthon Carter and Loretta Lynch. Sir, let's take Loretta Lynch first and the Department of Justice that she will take over. Is anything really going to change, or is she pretty much just going to follow through and carry through on Eric Holder's decisions and the culture that he has started there?
Well, I can tell you, I know a prosecutor who worked with Miss Lynch and said she's tough as nails. She's a very sharp lawyer, very good prosecutor. However, I also know someone who is very close to Valerie Jarrett, the president's close advisor, who said there is no interest in this White House of having anyone at any of the departments or any of the judicial nominations that are left for his 2 years who aren't going to salute the flag, which is the flag of Obama, and do exactly what the president and the White House tell them to do. So much for independence, so much for prosecutorial discretion. It'll be anything and everything Barack Obama wants as opposed to anything and everything that's in the best interests of the United States.
Asthon Carter is seen as a pretty tough guy, but do you also see him pretty much as a nodding your head, yes sir kind of guy?
I do. I have great respect for Mr. Carter. I think he's a very smart individual, very smart former Harvard Kennedy School professor. But we don't need Harvard Kennedy School professors running the Department of Defense who are bureaucratic experts. We need strategic, seasoned hands who have the respect of the military, who know how to tactically plan and execute operations, and who have respect of the line and file of the troops, the airmen, and the sailors and soldiers and Marines in our armed forces. And I just don't know that Mr. Carter is that choice.
We got about 30 seconds left here. We are now sending former prisoners from Guantanamo Bay to Uruguay as refugees. I don't know about you, but that caught a lot of people by surprise and really, I think, made a lot of people darkly laugh.
You know what the sad thing is? This doesn't surprise me, Ed. I think what this administration wants to do is he wants to slowly get the number of detainees down to about 100, maybe 95, and then say, see, we've emptied out Guantanamo. There's no reason why we can't shut it down. There's no reason why we can't bring these folks to trial here in the United States. This is about cold, calculated politics at its worst and decisions, again, that imperil the national security interests of the United States of America.
Ron, thank you so much for your comments. Excellent stuff in the Daily Beast, by the way, my friend. If we don't speak before then, to you and your family, have a great holiday season.
Right back at you, my friend. Talk soon.
All right, take care, Ron. Short break. We're back with a new fight over civil rights and cops being overrun by those who seek less law enforcement. And at 34 minutes after the hour, the insider's reason on why releasing a CIA report on torture to the general public is just a bad idea.